Fellow gamers, fellow tech enthusiasts, Tommy Hawk doing the news. So I see recently Xbox controller drift lawsuit is going to arbitration. As I read through the story here, it seems that many of the game makers these days are having problems with drift on the sticks on their controls. So what does that mean? Well, basically, if you put the controller down on the table, for example, the camera that may go around and show you the entire view of the area may go on its own without you even touching the controller. Now that's very, very hard to play a game that way. Or if your avatar moves on its own without you pushing anything on the controller, that can be detrimental to you when you have to stop and stay put. It basically can kill a video game. So, basically in this article, they talked about how the lawsuit for drift has been moved to arbitration. Now, I've noticed that one thing in my research is that drift is happening across all controllers because all of the major game manufacturers, Nintendo, Xbox, or Microsoft, I should say, and Sony for the PlayStation, they're all taking components from the same one manufacturer, most likely in China. And this is a basically broken component that they put into the controllers coming from this one company. And so now everyone that buys a video game console is ready to sue one of these three big game makers because of this drift issue. So what happens is, by moving it to arbitration, what I have found in my experience, arbitration basically means that a company does not wish to go to a public court and have this matter be made public. So what they do to circumvent that is go to arbitration. In my understanding, arbitration is basically one of the parties pays for a retired judge, for example, who then basically will go and oversee the proceedings in a private setting. So there's no public there, there's no media there, there's no nobody but the two parties in question and the arbitrator, who is the retired judge. In my experience, I've usually researched these arbitration cases to come to find that usually, for example, Microsoft would pay for the judge, and because they are doing so, the judge would oftentimes side with whoever's paying for the arbitration to happen. I don't think that's a very fair way to carry on justice, and I see it as really a way, like a miscarriage of justice, quite honestly. I really don't think that you should basically sign away your legal rights to go into a situation where a judge is going to side with the party that paid for that judge. And you're basically going to get nothing from that. And I really don't see that as any way to fix the problem that's going on with basically these components that are coming from a company. I think maybe the company should be sued. I've read this in my research too. Certain people think that maybe the three big game makers shouldn't be sued in courts or even have to go to arbitration. Maybe they should go after whoever's making the actual component that's put into the consoles. But I seriously doubt that is really going to be a viable option for people to do here in the States and other places that buy these consoles. So basically, instead of class action lawsuits, which have been started with regard to this drift issue, instead of class action lawsuits that are made public, basically the game makers are trying to make it private. And they want to independently go into a small room with a lawyer, or not a lawyer rather, but a judge that they most likely have paid for, so that the judge can vote against you. And I really don't agree with that. And I think that's why a lot of these companies are trying to get you to sign agreements now that says you will not sue them, you will go to arbitration. And so this is really disheartening because it feels to me like the game makers, instead of saying, hey, we want you to have fun and have a lot of fun with the things that we make, instead I think what they're doing is trying to say, hey, look, we're going to put garbage on you for a lot of money, and if it doesn't work and you don't like it, well, who cares? I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. You can not buy our garbage, and the hardware is getting more expensive, and you would expect it to be better quality, but it seldom is when it comes to video game consoles. So Controller drift has to be fixed by all the major game makers. They got to take it seriously. They've got to maybe find new vendors or make the components themselves. I mean, do whatever you got to do, guys, to kill the drift issue so that there's no more litigation that's required or arbitration or any of this mess. It's really a scary thing to think about arbitration and litigation when it comes to gaming. I mean, it will push people out of gaming. I've been a lifelong gamer. It's why I'm doing gaming reviews, tech reviews. But my gosh, how scary is this to think that they could sell me a $500 brand new console and it could have these kind of drift issues and there's not a thing I could do about it. Wow. Anyway, more thoughts on more stories coming up soon. Thanks for listening.